a little bit of a slideshow. I will share the current ransomware report that we specifically for the South African market with the team from 7C, and then they can then distribute it to all attendees currently on this call. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go through a couple of data points and just to give you guys a bit of an idea of where we are currently as a country. So one of the first questions that we normally get asked is, why do bad things happen to good companies? And that comes down to, why do organizations keep getting breached? If we look at most companies today, everybody has some sort of security measures in place. And what we find is that the technology is moving at such a fast pace, and the adversaries are keeping up with what the vendors out there are currently doing, and they're finding new and innovative ways to breach companies. And so why are organizations, so the question comes back to, why do organizations keep getting breached? And it comes down to, when we look at the hackers out in the market today, it is essentially a business model for them. You can go onto the dark web today and you can actually go and buy ransomware as a service for to go and hack somebody. So it comes down to key pillars. Like, cybersecurity is very complex. It moves so fast, and it becomes so difficult, and organizations just cannot keep up with the demand currently. And part of that comes down to skills as well. A lot of companies will employ individuals. They will get those individuals skilled up, and then before you know, those individuals will move on to greener pastures because they see bigger opportunity, bigger paychecks. And then the companies are left to start all over again. So you make all those investments into your organization to get people skilled up to look after your environment, to make sure that you as an organization are safe. And then before you know it, you have to go and relook at additional people that you have to go and employ. So what do we see currently as the top threats of 2024? So as a cybersecurity vendor, we see a lot of telemetry out in the market. So we've got access to a huge data lake of information that we see. We protect over 150 million endpoints worldwide, and we see about 30 billion new ransomware adversaries being born each and every day. So how do we keep up as an organization to protect our customers? So one of the biggest things is that we see that ransomware is still very much prevalent in the market. We as an organization, as a local team in South Africa, we get about between 5 and 10 calls every week from customers phoning us and saying, we have been breached, we've been hit by ransomware, we need some assistance. And if you go and Google ransomware protections, Sophos is one of the top companies that will pop up, and that's one of our key benefits from a technology standpoint, is that we are very good at protecting against ransomware. So ransomware today, it's not just adversaries that will go out and try and steal people's data or trying to get them to pay a ransomware, but we also see a lot of organizations that will go onto the dark web and they will go and buy ransomware as a service, where they would go and try and disrupt their competitors. Because as an organization, if you are being impacted and you are being compromised, what is the effect going to be to your business? Can you afford to be down? Can you afford to not trade for a couple of days? And what we've seen is that these type of services have tripled in the last couple of years. And with that, we also see that the majority of hackers today are kids. They range anything from 16 years old right up until 23 years old, and it's mostly guys that are just looking to have some fun, and then while they're doing it, they're looking at ways to make some money out of it. And then one of the other top threats that we see is that data and credential theft. So data is becoming the new gold as a way where data is becoming very important. And one of the biggest areas that we see where data is being compromised is in customer backups. So a lot of customers will have backups, and they feel secure in the knowing that if I've got backups in place, if something happens, I can just back up and restore. But what we see today is that a lot of hackers are currently targeting customers' backups. So we've had an incident where we had a customer. They were hit by ransomware and they backed up, and then the backup was compromised, and then they went to a later backup, and eventually they had to go back as far as 18 months to get a backup that was actually clean and safe to use, that didn't have any traces of the adversary in the environment. So imagine, as an organization, can you afford to lose 18 months worth of backup? So what we see today is that, so that is definitely one of the first areas that attackers are currently attacking organizations. And then on top of that, we also see that the email is still quite a big area entry point for attackers to gain entry into organizations, because at the end of the day, unfortunately to say, but the weakest link in most organizations today is unfortunately the users. So if users are not educated and they go and click on mails, on links, and opening up attachments on mails that they don't know the origin of, that could seriously be a detriment to your organization. And then one of the other areas that we see as well is that we've got all these malicious drivers currently in the market, where legitimate companies that will go and be being targeted because of the adversaries obfuscating their information, that it looks like a legitimate company, but in the back end it is a piece of ransomware or malware that sits there and that gets your company infected. And then one of the other biggest areas that we see is that there's a lot of unmanaged devices currently in the market. So one of the big things that we've seen especially with COVID and what that has brought to the industry, is that we have a hybrid model of users not just sitting in the office anymore, but that they are working remotely. They're sitting at home, they're sitting at coffee shops, they're traveling abroad, and they're all over the place. So a lot of devices are not being unmanaged, and if the organization doesn't have access to monitor and protect that device, the users essentially being at risk. So when that user then eventually connects back securely into his environment, him being potentially compromised, he's now putting the whole organization at risk. So we see that the attackers are currently looking at different ways to attack companies. So they're finding new ways to gain entry into your organization, to see what exactly you as an organization, what do you currently do, who works for you, what is your current turnover, what information do you potentially have, and then they use all of these information to create a targeted attack to see, okay, what can we actually get from this company? So one of the big things that we see today as well is that a lot of attacks today are targeted. The attackers will first go and do their homework. They will go and find out who you as an organization are, and they will know exactly how much you can actually pay. So in the event that they target you with ransomware, they know exactly, okay, we're not just going to give you a silly number and expect you to pay it. We're going to give you something that we know you can afford. And most companies today, they will actually go and pay that ransomware because they've got no other option. So what we're currently looking at, we look at 3 pillars currently in the market that is currently at risk, and that will be your people, processes, and technologies. So when we look at cybersecurity and the cybersecurity industry as a whole, and we look at most vendors out there today, they only cater for the top 1% of all organizations globally, because the top 1% of organizations globally, they can afford to employ the best people, they can afford to have the best processes in place, and they can afford to have the best technology in place. So unfortunately, what happens to the other 99% of companies out there? So we look at this as and we call it the cybersecurity divide, or the cybersecurity poverty line, where technology today only caters for the elite, but what happens to the small business, mid-market, and enterprise businesses that doesn't fall into that 1%? So when we look at people today, we see that globally there's currently about 4 million cybersecurity positions that is in demand, where there's such a shortage currently, and it comes back to what I mentioned earlier. You invest all the time and energy into individuals to get them skilled up to look after your environment, and then once those people are at a skilled level, they are being poached by big organizations that can offer them more money. So what do small businesses, how do you retain your customers essentially, or your users essentially, from a skills perspective? And then it also comes down to processes. One of the things that we see is that currently in South Africa, we've got about 69% of organizations that were victim to some sort of ransomware last year. So imagine 7 out of 10 companies today being at risk for ransomware. So we do see that ransomware is still much prevalent, especially in our market, where a lot of customers will come to us and say, "Yeah, I'm not worried. I will never be targeted." And it's no longer a matter of, am I going to be being targeted? It's a matter of, when am I going to be targeted? So, what processes do companies currently have in place to protect themselves against ransomware and other adversaries out in the market? And then lastly, we're looking at the technology layer, and we see that 95% of organizations find the technology very challenging, especially when it comes to the investigation. So a lot of companies will have different security tools, and for you to go and try and pinpoint exactly where did the threat come from, how did it spread, what information was potentially compromised. So this ties in back with people when it comes to the skill level. If you don't have the right skills to go and manage your environment for you, how do you, as an organization, how do you stay protected? So when we look at the current state of ransomware in South Africa, so as I mentioned, we do a global survey each and every year. And every year, the amount of IT professionals that we target increases. So there will be a new report coming out in 2025, and then based on the current information or the trend that we've seen in the last couple of years, the trend indicates that the market is not improving. We're actually getting worse off, essentially. So if we look at the South African market, there was a study done by Interpol, and South Africa currently ranks third in the world of the highest attacked cybersecurity country worldwide. So what does that mean? It means that we as South Africa, we are definitely on the list of companies or countries or individuals targeting our businesses, because a lot of companies don't have the right infrastructure in place, or that don't have they might have the right technology, but it also comes down to how is that technology being managed and how is that technology being configured. So it comes down to, what are the current key findings? So as I mentioned, 7 out of every 10 companies were hit by ransomware last night, and then that's quite scary. A lot of companies will not disclose that they were potentially compromised. So when we look at POPI, for instance, when it comes down to compliance, the POPI Act states that if you as an organization, if you have been compromised and data has been compromised, you need to notify your customers, and you need to notify the industry. And what we find is that a lot of companies don't do that, because currently, even though POPI is already in place, it is not actively being enforced. Yes, there's a couple of investigations happening with some of the bigger organizations, but it's not down to the smaller organizations yet, but it is coming. So as an organization, you essentially, if you have been compromised, you need to let your customers and the people that you keep personal data of, you need to let them know what's happening, what information has potentially been compromised. And then as I mentioned, one of the other areas that we see is that a lot of backups for organizations are being compromised. 44% of backups are being compromised and has been successfully compromised. So it comes down to your data. Your data is very important. So the first thing that the attackers will do is they will go and try and compromise your data as soon as possible. So not just the individual anymore, but rather what you as an organization, what you are currently have available that could be potentially used against you going forward. So also when we look at ransomware, a lot of companies, when they do pay the ransomware, you're not even guaranteed to get it back. So 4 out of 5 companies that pay the ransom, they don't actually get their data back. And if they do get data back, it is only limited data. They don't get 100% of the data back. And it's only a couple of companies that will actually get their data back if they made the payments. And the reason for that is that, as I mentioned, these attackers, for them, this is a business. So if I attack you today and you pay the ransomware, then I know, okay, you're a good payer. So I'm going to try and hack you again to see if I can get more money out of you. So to give you an idea, we've had an old age home that has been attacked, where the guys knew that the old age home had 50,000 rand in their savings account, and that's what they asked for the ransomware. So it shows that these guys don't care what you currently have available, even if it's limited resources. They will make sure that they can get what they know that you can pay. And then we also then see that 97% of all South African ransomware attacks, that the backup was the number one area of compromise. So data is really becoming a big factor for organizations. So what is your backup strategy currently? Do you have a backup strategy? Are you backing up to a local DR site? Do you have local backups? Do you have cloud backups? What is your strategy today? Because one of the areas that organizations need to focus on is looking after their data. So when we look at what is the current recommendations from our standpoint, is that the first recommendation would be prevention. So how do I make sure that I don't get compromised as an organization? How do I protect my organization to make sure that I've got some strong security currently in place? And for most organizations, the first layer of defense would be their endpoints or potentially a firewall. So when we look at cybersecurity is a layered approach. When you look at your home security, you're going to have various factors in place to make sure that the guys don't break into your house. You will have a electric fence. You might have some barbed wire up. You might have a perimeter alarm, so that if somebody gets into your property, that the alarm goes off. You'll have your windows will be barred. You will have an alarm system inside the house. You might have cameras up. You might have an attack dog. So the same comes down to your protection layers from a security standpoint for your cybersecurity. Is what layers of defense do you currently have? Do you have in place to make it as difficult as possible for guys to gain entry into your organization? And then it comes down to the detection and response. How do you detect threats into your network? Do you have somebody that monitors your environment for you? And if you do have somebody, can they actually go and respond and clean up? It comes down to do you know exactly what to look for? When we look at most companies, they will have a dispersed technology in the environment for you to go and monitor different technologies and different dashboards. Do you actually know where the attack came from? Can you pinpoint it to an exact point to say that I know exactly where it came from and I was able to stop it? Most companies don't, and if they do, if we look at just a mid-market type of administrator that has got some skill, we found that it can take them up to 14 days to find where the attack came from. So can you afford to be compromised for 14 days before your network is cleaned up and you're back online? And then it also comes down to your planning and preparation. So one of the key areas that we focus on is when we speak to customers is, do you have an incident response plan? What is your plan in the event that you get compromised? So when we look at an incident response plan, it's not just having a plan in place, but it's also to go and practice that plan. So to prepare. So where you run a war room session internally to see that, okay, let's see if something happens, what are the steps that we need to take? Who are the people that needs to be involved? What do we need to do from an organizational point of view to recover? So, and that comes to my last slide where we look at this exact point is, as I mentioned, from a security layer, where are you currently in your cybersecurity journey? There, you might have an idea of where you are today, but where do you want to be in 5 years' time? And as we know, cybersecurity, unfortunately, most organizations sees it as a grudge purchase. They will only really respond to something once something has happened. So a lot of companies will feel secure that they have everything in place, but there is no silver bullet when it comes to cybersecurity. There's always a compromise somewhere down the line, and it comes down to how secure are you currently, and from a cybersecurity standpoint, what are the steps that we need to take to secure our customers. So together with partners like 7C, we can build that journey with you. We can say, okay, where is the starting point today, and where do we want to be? And we can work towards that together with you as the customer. So also, your incident response plan also comes down to your risk and your governance policies. What is your current practices that you currently have in place? That in the event that something happens, who are the people that need to take action? Who are the people that need to go and do your compliance management? Who are the people that need to make sure that your education and awareness is in place? So as an organization, you need to make sure that your people are constantly trained on what not to do when it comes to receiving information. Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, your users are your first point of contact. It's easier for a hacker to go and try and compromise a user than what it is for them to go and try and brute force attack a firewall, for instance. So are you confident enough that your users today are trained enough that they will spot a potential phishing email, or do you think that maybe you are at risk because there might be one or two people within the organization that might be at risk, for instance? And then what is your current operational plan? So in the event that you have detected that there's a compromise in your environment, how are you going to respond? How are you going to make sure that once you have been compromised, how are you going to get back up to a state that you can actually function as an organization? So part of the incident response plan is that we, from a Sophos standpoint, we can actually help organizations build a proper incident response plan to help mitigate this risk going forward. And together with partners, we can set this up, and we can have a one-on-one call and discussion to see what are your current strategies today, where do you want to be, and how can we assist you. As I mentioned, I will share the full report with you guys at the end of the session. I've just highlighted on a couple of the key points of that report. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you, Chris. That was very insightful. I believe we have some prizes up for grabs. And Chris, I believe you have some questions that you would like to ask the audience.
Okay, so first question is, do you guys today, do you currently feel safe? Do you guys feel that you have everything in place, that nothing will happen to you if you are being compromised, if somebody is trying to compromise your organization today? Just a raise of hands. Do you guys feel safe? Yes or no? Those that say yes, raise your hands. Those that no, you don't have to respond.
Chris, is this now for a prize?
No, it's just to get a feel for the audience to see where we are today.
Okay, cool.
I'm just having a look here quickly. Is there any questions from the audience before I ask some questions? You can come off mute if you've got a question. I know this is a sensitive topic, but has there been any of you guys that has been compromised previously? And what did you do to mitigate your risk? Do you guys have any sort of incident response plan currently in place? No one?
There was actually one in the chat. How often would you suggest doing end user training of cybersecurity, such as phishing awareness training?
That is a good question. So I would say as often as possible and as frequently as possible. So part of cybersecurity awareness training, it comes down to testing different groups within your organization, for instance. So you can maybe do something dedicated to finance, for instance. So one of the things that we see, for instance, is that when somebody sends an invoice or a proof of payment, or they're sending something that needs to be paid. So what a lot of companies or that we've seen in the past is that emails are being intercepted and details are being changed. So you receive an email saying, please make payment into this bank account, and the finance team will just go and make a payment, and then that payment goes to somebody completely different. So it comes down to, you can do dedicated training specifically for different teams within your organization. So depending on their function within the organization, or you can do a company-wide event where you can target everybody on the same sort of thing. So what we've seen that is quite popular, especially in South Africa, is that there's a lot of mails going around from the banks, from different banks, saying your details have been compromised. Please log in to make sure that your details are safe. Or when it's tax season, companies will receive emails from SARS saying that you qualify for X amount of refund. Please log into your account to verify your details. And a lot of people fall for that, where they don't really look at the information in detail. They'll go and say, okay, well, I did file my taxes and I'm sure I'm due a refund, and then they just go and click on a link, for instance. So it comes down to educating users to look at who is the sender. Did it come from a secure source? What does the information within the body of the email look like? Does it look like it's a generic email, or does it look like it was a personalized email? And then so it comes to answer the question, your cybersecurity awareness needs to be constant. You cannot just try and test your individuals once off and assume, okay, well, nobody fell for it, so I'm safe. You need to constantly change it up and make it relevant to your day-to-day things, to see, okay, what do I need to do to try and see, are my users currently, are they aware of what to look out for, or were they lucky the first time, for instance? And then to keep track of that. And then when you find that the same users constantly fail, it is to see, okay, maybe I should do some dedicated training with these users, and do a bit of more education to make sure that they know what to look out for, so that they don't potentially compromise my organization. Any other questions?
Yes. Okay. Which firewall is currently the best in the market?
Yeah, so that will come down to, for a lot of organizations, it will come down to preference. It will come down to cost. It will come down to ease of use. So when we compare technologies, and to put this delicately, it comes down to what can technology do for you today. And when we look at a couple of years ago, when your targeted attacks became more prominent within the industry, a lot of companies would have gone and they would have looked at places like Gartner, and they would have looked at what is the current best technologies listed on Gartner, and they would then buy best of breed products, and they would assume, okay, I've got best of breed products, I'm safe. So what happens in today's environment is that a lot of cybersecurity companies, as a matter of fact, most of the cybersecurity companies today, we all share data. So when we see something, we update the industry, and so does our competitors. So we're not in the market to hinder our customers. We're all in the market to make sure that our customers are protected. So to answer the question, I can't tell you who's the best. It comes down to preference at the end of the day. I'm not going to say that we are 100 times better than our competitors. We all have our individual strengths and weaknesses, and we all have our place within the market where we play. So we can have a more detailed discussion around firewalls and cybersecurity in general in terms of who is better than who. But yes, have a chat with the guys from 7C, and they will tell you who's their preferred vendor that they would like to use for their firewall security.
Okay, so I have another question. How difficult is it to protect our business? Do we get a product first that acts like a security gate to our network? Then do we do staff training once or more? So how complicated is security, or is it relatively structured to implement?
To answer that question, that will come down to where you as an organization are today. So do you currently have anything in place already? If not, then the question should be, okay, where do I need to start? So ideally, the first place is you need to look at your users. Are your users currently all office bound? Do they have company assets that are outside of the network? So do they take their laptop or their maybe their company phone? Do they take it home, or does it stay at work? So it comes down to where you are in the organization currently. So typically, if we look at most organizations, they would typically look at network security, so where they will have a firewall in place. So when the user is sitting at the office, he will sit behind a company firewall, and the firewall will protect them. But what happens when that user is outside of the network, when they take that laptop home and they go and connect to their home network tonight? So then the second layer would be your endpoint security. How do I make sure that my user, when he's not behind my firewall, how do I protect him? And then the third layer would be your email. As I mentioned, email is one of the biggest areas that attackers are focusing on. So do I have a proper email product or security in place that can filter out all the noise, and that the emails that I get are actually legitimate emails and not spam emails? So you need to also look at where you are as an organization today. So if you have something in place, what is the next step? Where do you want to be? So then you can start looking at layering your approach by adding additional products into the environment. So that is a conversation that we can have, where we can sit down with you and see where are you and where do you want to be. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we then build a plan to get you to where you would like to be, essentially. So it just comes down to where you are as an organization today. So I'm not going to say you need to have one or the other. Ideally, you would need to have at least one of at least something in place to make sure that you are secure at some point, and then from there, just build on top of that.
Okay, I have some more questions. Is it possible to recover from a ransom attack whose client's data is encrypted? I have a customer whose servers were encrypted, and strange enough, they claimed that Sophos antivirus was installed.
Okay, that's interesting. So I've been with Sophos now for just over 9 years, and we have never had a customer that has been compromised with ransomware. And we've had one instance a couple of years ago, and it came down to the product wasn't configured properly. So from a product standpoint, Sophos right out the box today, when you install it, it will already have best practice already enabled. So protecting customers against ransomware. So as an organization, if you guys understand how ransomware works, so typically if an attacker is on your network, the first thing that they will try and do is they will try and encrypt your information. So let's say so how do we as Sophos do it? So let's say you've got a file that you work on a daily basis, and that file you make changes daily. So that file will only change in size incrementally. They will only, so let's say the file is 10 kilobits. No, you make a change now it becomes 11 kilobits, or you take something off and it becomes 9 kilobits. So what will happen is in the event of ransomware, when encryption is on the machine, what it will do is it will take that file and it will quadruple in size. So as soon as we as Sophos, as soon as we detect that a file increases exponentially within a couple of seconds, we know that ransomware is on that machine. And then because we are also an encryption company, we fight encryption with encryption. So what we do is we take your data, we go and encrypt it and save it into a temporary folder. Once the ransomware has run its course, we will then decrypt the information and give it back to you. So you might only lose maybe 1 or 2 files from the whole attack. So a lot of our customers are one of the key features built within our endpoint product is our crypto guard, and that has saved a lot of companies from ransomware in the past. But to answer the rest of the question, where if it's possible to recover, so in some cases, if it is a known variant of ransomware that has been used in the past, chances are that we might have the decryption key to decrypt the information. But if it is a brand new ransomware attack that has never been seen before, then unfortunately, if you are hit by ransomware, there's no way to recover unless you can get a recovery key later on from someone. But the chances are that it's not possible. But yeah, I'm quite intrigued by the what you said, that somebody has used Sophos before and they were encrypted from ransomware. I would like to have a chat and find out a bit more about that. But yeah, in the time that I've been with Sophos, we've never had any incidents of customers being ransomware while using our product.
Okay, just on that note, someone also wants to know what's the first thing to do the moment you realize your network have been compromised?
So the first thing would be is to try and minimize the spread of the attack. So by taking devices offline, segregating the network, so isolating that specific instance. So if you know that a server potentially has been compromised, rather take that server offline so that it doesn't, so that the users are not able to connect to it and no other server is able to connect to it. So as to try and minimize the spread of the attack as quickly as possible. Then that will only come down to if you know what has been compromised. In most instances, a lot of companies won't know what has happened. So if we look at the the most attacks happen today is between 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon and 2 o'clock on a Monday morning. So over a weekend, over public holidays, late at night, early in the mornings, when users are not online, when there's nobody looking at the environment. So by the time an attack has been noticed, it might be too late already. You might have been compromised 100% already. But in the event that you have been alerted that something is wrong and you have been able to identify where it started, the best place is to isolate that instance immediately so that it doesn't spread and affect the rest of the network.
Okay. What is your opinion on using a password manager service? Would you recommend storing your passwords here instead of relying on saved passwords in your browser?
So a password manager would be the best, because if I know, and I speak of experience, a lot of people when they log onto something, Google will pop up and say, "Do you want to save your password?" And you just say yes. So next time when you log in, your password is already there, and you can just go and log in. So problem with passwords today as well is that a lot of people use the same passwords for everything. So they will have multiple accounts that they use, and instead of trying to remember different passwords, they will use the same password. So that's why it's recommended to use complex passwords and using something like a password manager to save those passwords, so you don't have to remember every single password that you've ever created in your life. And then also it comes down to how do you need to also manage your passwords in the sense that you need to change them frequently as well. And a lot of people don't do that because and if they do, they will use something simple like, okay, this month is October, so my password is October 2024. Next month is November, so I changed my password to November 2024. And so that's how most users today will do it, instead of trying to create something that will be complex, but then also how do I manage it? Do I write it down on a piece of paper? Do I just save it to my browser? And it comes down to, even if I just write it on a piece of paper, somebody might walk past my desk and they'll see there's a piece of paper and they'll take it and then, this is your password. So yes, a password manager is the ideal place, and it comes down to finding a reputable password manager that you can use. Something like 1Password, for instance, is good. We as Sophos, our users are advised or urged to use something like that as well. So yes, password manager is good to manage your passwords.
Okay, so the following question relates to the security awareness training. So someone wants to know, are there specific testing tools we can use to test the staff?
So yes, so we as Sophos, we've got a product called Sophos Fish Threat. This is purely a educational tool. This tool can also incorporate into your Outlook, for instance. So in the event that you receive an email that you suspect is potentially a phishing email, you can actually go and report that email. So there's a function within Outlook that you can go and report the email. So that email will then be sent to Sophos Labs, which is our team that looks after threats on a global scale. They will go and dissect the file, and then if they find that the file is malicious, they will come back and say, this is a malicious file, please delete it. Or if it is a safe file, they'll say, yes, this mail is safe to use as well. So from a phishing simulation point of view, the emails that are being sent out could be targeted to try and bait the user to click on a link or to open up an attachment. And in the event that a user clicks on it, will actually then prompt them to do a bit of a training session for them to go and get themselves familiarized of what are the things that they need to look out for when they receive emails. So a lot of other products out there in the market as well can incorporate with your existing infrastructure as well to test users. But from a software standpoint, our awareness training is only based on email, but there are other vendors out there that will test on other things as well. So like if you pick up a USB drive, so what are the risks of that? Or when you're doing file sharing between users on their mobile devices, for instance, or if you download something and you share it with somebody over WhatsApp. So there are other tools out there to test users as well, to see what information could potentially can compromise an organization. But from a software standpoint, we're only focusing on the email layer, so to educate users on the threats of potential phishing emails and the like.
Okay, so on that note, can Sophos Fish Threat Simulator be integrated with the Office 365 Threat Simulator, and how often should users be tested?
So from an integration point of view, as I mentioned, so this will, I'm not sure about the Office 365 Threat Simulator, but yes, we incorporate with your Outlook or with your Office 365, where you can go and report the email should you suspect that it is potentially malicious, and then coming back to how frequently, as frequent as possible. So we've got organizations that test their users on a weekly basis. But the downside of that comes to, if you do it too frequently, the users might catch on and they might know, okay, I've just received a phishing email. So you need to do it when as often as you deem as an organization. So you can maybe start off with a couple in a like constant, like one after the other, and then from there on scale it down a bit, where you will only target maybe certain individuals or maybe certain groups, and then maybe once every 3 to 6 months you can do a company-wide test again to see is there anybody that still needs some training on their user awareness training.
Great. I think that is it. Are we now ready to give away the vouchers?
Yeah, so I've got 5 Sophos home vouchers that I can give away. What I'll do is I will share the vouchers with the Tarsus team that they can then send through to 7C to hand out to the guys. And I think some of the good questions that I received, I think I would like to so quickly have a look here. So if I have to pick 5, I would say I would maybe Ronald, Samantha, Stephen, and Lavesh, and Paul. I'll give 5 vouchers to those individuals that they can then. So the Sophos home license is to load onto your personal devices at home. So if you've got a personal laptop or desktop at home, if you've got tablets or phones for your kids, you can load the licenses on there as well, just to keep your home user safe. So the Sophos home product is on the same security level as the corporate product, but this will be dedicated only for a home user. So you as a home user can manage then all those different devices within your environment. So congratulations, I'll send the vouchers over through to Tarsus after this call.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much, Graham. Is there anything else that you would like to say?
No, I'm good from my side. Thank you, Ria, and thank you, Chris. And I enjoyed the questions. They were also very interesting. A couple were mine, but yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.